Okay, so we're talking about 2.7. This section's about order of operations. And so that title is really confusing for a lot of people, but what I want you to know is that it is the same thing as the please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And it's also the same thing as the PEMDAS, depending what age range you fall in. If you're a little bit older like I am, the please excuse my dear Aunt Sally is how you learned it when you were growing up and going through elementary, middle school, even junior high for some of us. PEMDAS is kind of the more modern term used for this, but it does mean the same thing. The rules are exactly the same no matter what you call it, but the order of operations is what this section is going to talk about. And so I want to flip to this first screen that I've created for you. And so here you see the PEMDAS, so PEMDAS here, or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, however you need to remember it. But I want you to know what each of these are for. And so the P is for grouping symbols. And so the grouping symbols would be brackets, or parentheses, depending on what kind of problem we have. And sometimes it could use both brackets and parentheses to help us tell us what to solve first. The E is for exponents or powers. And so I'm going to go through some examples and remind you of what exponents and powers are. And I want you to see that the M and the D for multiply and divide are grouped together. They are equal. I feel like I missed this when I was growing up, and that they made me feel like multiply had to happen first and then divide had to happen second. And same thing for add and subtract, but I want you to know that multiply and divide are actually even. Not one of them is better than the other, and you solve multiply and divide as one, just moving from left to right. So you do all of the multiply and divide as you come to it as you move left to right through the problem. And the same thing for the add subtract, but you do the add subtract after you've completely finished all of the multiplying and dividing, and then you add and subtract from left to right, whatever you come to. So if you were working left and moving through the problem and you had a subtract problem first, you would subtract and then keep working your way through to the right side of the problem, and then if you had add or subtract again, you would take care of those. So let's look at some examples of exponents and powers first to kind of refresh our memory, and then we're going to move into some problems that use order of operations. So this problem is 6 squared. I want you to see that this guy right here is called our base, and this guy right here is called our exponent. So the base is the number that we're actually using, and the exponent tells us how many times we're going to have that base. So we're going to have a base 2 times. So this is how we solve that problem. I have 2 of them because the exponent says I have 2, and 6 is the base, and that's what I have. And so I multiply 6 times 6 and I find 36, and so this is my final answer for this problem. So the next one would be 2 to the 3rd power. I have 2, and how many do I have? I have 3 of them. And so for me to solve this problem, I have to multiply 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8. And so 2 to the 3rd power is 8. I want you to see that this is not a problem that is 2 times 3, okay, because that gives us 6. That is not the same thing as what we're doing, okay? So please don't get carried away in thinking that that's how these are solved. All right, let's look at one last one, and this is 4 squared. So I have the base of 4. I have it 2 times because the exponent tells me how many, and 4 times 4 is 16, okay? All right, let's go on and let's work out some problems here. The first one that I have is going to be 4 times 8 minus 10. Okay, and so for me, I'm going to write this, whoops, I meant to change colors. I wrote my order of operations up there so I can keep track of what we're actually doing and the steps and the rules that I have to use. So here's the problem. There are no parentheses, so I'm going to just mark the parentheses out here. There are no exponents, so I'm moving on to this multiply divide section. I don't see any divide, but I do see multiply, and I want you to see this little thing right here that I wrote underneath there in that black ink. It shows that I'm going to use the 4 and the 8, and I'm going to put them together, and so out of this I'm going to get one answer that's going to go right here. Okay, they're going to combine together, funnel together, and end up with one answer right there. So I'm showing myself that I've used these 2 and it came out as one answer. So 4 times 2 gives me 32, and I bring down everything else that I have not used yet. And 32, now we're in the add subtract section because that's all I have left is subtract, and then I have 32 minus 10, which gives me a final answer of 22. Okay. Move on to another one. I'm going to write my rules. Okay, the problem is 6 plus 2 times 7. So there are no parentheses, no exponents. I'm at the multiply divide, and there is a multiply divide, and 2 times 7 is 14. Remember, I used those two, so I'm going to bring down what I did not use, and that's the 6 plus 6. Now I've used all my multiply divide. I'm on to the add subtract. There is no subtract at all, so add is the only thing I have, and I want you to see that I'm adding together 6 and 14, and I get 20. Final answer. Okay. Let's do some that are a little more difficult, a little more complex. 3 plus 2 times 5 minus 3. I've got parentheses in this one. That's a plus sign. So my order of operations. All right, parentheses. I do have some, and so this is what I'm taking care of first. 5 minus 3 gives me 2. I'm going to leave it inside parentheses because there's no symbol between this 2 here. And so that parenthesis and the 2 touching means I'm going to multiply right there is what's happening. There's no exponents. I'm on to multiply divide. There is one section where I'm going to multiply, and it's 2 times 2 is 4. I'm going to bring down everything else that I didn't use, which are these guys. I'm going to add, and so when I add these together, I get a final answer of 7. Remember, if at any point it's too fast for you, pause it, rewind it, watch it again. This one is 3. I've got brackets, 8 plus 2, 4 times 5 minus 10, and then close brackets. So what I need you to see is this bracket right here tells you that we're going to take care of everything in here first before we multiply by 3. But before that, I actually have to follow the parentheses here first to take care of that. So we're going to write our order of operations. So inside the blue parentheses, I have 4 times 5 minus 10. So I need to follow the order of operations inside that parenthesis. And so I know multiply divide is going to come first because I don't have any, I'm doing the parentheses. I don't have any exponents, so I'm going to multiply. So I have 20 minus 10 because 4 times 5 gave me 20, still inside the parentheses. And so when I subtract, I end up with 10. I'm going to leave it in parentheses, and I'm going to bring everything else that I have not used down. Okay? So now inside the parentheses, I have a 10. I can't really do anything with that, and so I am needing to move on to the brackets and make sure that I do all of the order of operations inside of those brackets. So inside the brackets, I have an addition problem between the 8 and 2, and then I have a multiplication problem between this 2 and the 10. So according to my rules up here, I get to multiply before I get to add. So I'm going to multiply first, and 2 times 10 gave me 20, and I'm going to bring down the plus 8, my brackets, and that 3 on the outside. Inside the brackets, all I have to do now is add, and so I bring down my 3, and I get 28 when I add 8 and 20. And then I multiply 3 times 28, and I get 84 as a final answer. Okay? All right, let's do another one that's a little more difficult. This one is going to be 3 plus 2 times 5 minus 4 plus 63 divided by 7 plus 20. All right, there's a lot going on here, okay? And so we know our rules, and we know our rules are parentheses are going to happen first. And so inside the parentheses, we've got, and this really, nothing's happening in the parentheses. What that's telling you is you're going to multiply the 2 and the 5, but that's not really in parentheses. So this guy right here is what we need to be taking care of. And so I need parentheses. I'm going to take care of that. There's no exponents. There's no multiply, but there is a divide. So I'm going to divide 63 divided by 7. And when you do that, remember that you're going to have to bring down your plus 4, okay? So 63 divided by 7 is going to give you 9. So here's my plus 4, I'm sorry, my 4 plus, and I bring down the answer from the 63 and 7, which is my 9. I'm going to leave it in parentheses because I'm not done with this yet. I'm going to bring down everything else. And can problems like this take up a lot of paper? Yes, of course they can. But if you rewrite them, you're keeping track of what you're using and what you have, okay? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of the other inside the parentheses, and 4 plus 9 is going to give me 13. I don't need the parentheses anymore because I'm done with everything there, and there's nothing in front of it that I need to multiply it by except for a negative, which it's going to take it anyways, and you'll learn that a little bit later. And so here's the rest of this problem. I'm just writing everything down. Okay, so now I'm back at stage 1. I'm following these order of operations again, okay? And parentheses, there are some, but you can't take care of anything in the parentheses, so the parentheses really don't exist. Exponents, there's not any exponents, but we are at multiply, and there is multiplication right here, right? The two parentheses are touching, so it means to multiply. And so when I multiply, I get 10, okay? I'm going to bring down everything that I haven't used. And now I'm at just an add-subtract stage, right? And remember, the add and subtract are equals, so you don't do one over the other, you just do it as you move from left to right. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to add 3 plus 10 is 13. I'm going to bring down everything else. I'm still at this add-subtract stage, so I'm going to subtract 13 minus 13, and I get 0. I'm going to add 20, and I find a final answer of 20. Okay. All right, that concludes our lesson for this section, which is section 2.7.